Today, we are diving into one of the most foundational and, let's be honest, kind of mind-bending beliefs in all of Christianity, the idea that Jesus is God. It's a claim that pretty much shapes the entire faith. So, how is it actually explained? Let's break it down.
So, right at the very heart of Christianity, you have this monumental question. It's a claim that really sets it apart from anything else. Is Jesus God? Now, for believers, the answer is a definite yes. But the why? Well, that's built on a pretty fascinating framework. So let's walk through it, step by step. The whole argument really kicks off right here, with this super famous verse from the Gospel of John. This one sentence just sets the entire stage. It identifies something called the Word as being both with God and, at the same time, being God, from the very, very beginning. And this Word, as we're about to see, is identified as Jesus.
All right, so let's start with the core claim itself. What's the actual evidence that's presented for Jesus being divine?
Well, the first line of evidence, and maybe the most powerful, comes directly from Jesus himself. And we're not talking about subtle hints here. These were bold, direct claims. He said he was one with God the Father. He used the sacred name I Am, which is the same name God gave to Moses. He even called himself the Alpha and the Omega, the beginning and the end of everything.
But it went way beyond just his words. It was also about what he did. I mean, he accepted worship from people, which was an absolute no-go for anyone but God. He performed miracles that showed he had authority over nature itself. Even his closest followers, guys like the apostles, they straight up called him God. And then all of this builds to the final ultimate proof, the resurrection, which is seen as the undeniable confirmation of his divine identity.
Okay, so the claim is pretty clear, but it immediately brings up a huge question. How does that even work? How can a divine being become a human being? So let's dive into the how of it all.
And yep, here's that very question. If Jesus is God, who is eternal and spirit, how can he also be a human being, born in a specific time in a specific place? This is where a really key theological concept comes into play.
And the answer has a name, the incarnation. It literally means in the flesh. And this is the core belief that Jesus is at the same time fully God and fully man. Not half and half or some God wearing a human costume, but 100% of both, united in one person.
Now, this brings up a really important distinction so we don't get confused. Theology talks about two different kinds of births. First, there's this idea that Jesus was eternally begotten. Now, that doesn't mean he was created at some point, no. Instead, it's describing an eternal relationship that he has always shared the exact same divine essence as the Father. And that is totally separate from his physical, human birth to Mary, which happened at a specific moment in history.
And that historical human birth is explained through the miracle of the virgin birth. The whole narrative kind of follows three key steps. It kicks off with the angel Gabriel's shocking announcement to Mary. Then he explains that this isn't going to be a normal conception. It's going to be a unique act of the Holy Spirit. The end result is the miracle that makes the incarnation possible, the union of God and humanity in one person.
So, we've got Jesus as fully God and fully man. But how does he relate to God the Father? See, this idea of Jesus' divinity doesn't just exist in a vacuum. It actually fits into a much larger theological framework, the Trinity. To start to get our heads around this, we can begin with some strange but profound math. The Trinity isn't 1 + 1 + 1 = 3. It's way more like 1 × 1 × 1 = 1. And this really illustrates the key idea. The three persons don't add up to make one God. Instead, each one of them is the one God.
So here's the more official definition. The Trinity is the doctrine that there is one God who has always existed as three distinct persons, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Each person is fully God, they're totally equal, and they've always existed together. It's considered one of the core mysteries of the faith.
Now, this is a really tough concept to wrap your head around, so for centuries, people have used analogies to try and help. The first one, and probably the most famous, is water, right? You can have ice, liquid, and steam. They're three totally different forms, but they all share the same essential nature. They're all H2O. Another really popular analogy is an egg. You've got a shell, a white, and a yolk. Each part is distinct. It has its own properties, but all together, they make up one single egg.
Or how about the sun? It's one single star, yet it produces both light and heat. Three distinct things coming from one unified source. But it is so crucial to remember these are just helpful pictures. They're not perfect explanations. Every one of them breaks down if you push it too far, because at the end of the day,
They're just human attempts to describe a divine mystery.
Now, there's a very common and, to be honest, a very fair objection to this entire framework, and we're going to tackle it head on.
And here it is. People often point out, and they're right, that the actual word Trinity never appears anywhere in the Bible. So if it's not even in there, how can it be such a core doctrine?
Well, the classic response to this is that Trinity is just a label. It's a theological term that was created to describe a concept that is found all over the Scriptures. And it's not the only one. I mean, think about it. Words like incarnation or omnipotence, even the word Bible itself, they aren't in the original texts. They're just the words we use to define the core ideas that are absolutely there.
So, if God is one being in three persons, does that mean they all do the exact same job? Well, not exactly. Let's take a look at the distinct roles that each person of the Trinity plays. And this really gets to the heart of it. You've got one God, but three co-equal and inseparable persons. They're distinct from one another, yet they're completely unified. So what are their specific jobs?
Their roles are often described something like this. The Father is the grand architect, the one who initiates the divine plan. The Son, Jesus, is the one who carries out that plan here on earth. He's the Redeemer. And the Holy Spirit is God's active presence with humanity, the one who empowers and guides believers. You know, all of this theology was debated and hammered out almost 1,700 years ago in what's called the Nicene Creed. And this powerful line from that creed just perfectly captures the doctrine we've been exploring, that Jesus isn't some lesser God, but he's of the very same substance as God the Father.
And that really leaves us with a final thought. This isn't just ancient history, it's a living, breathing doctrine. So the question to reflect on is this: how does a complex theological idea figured out way back in the 4th century continue to be the central, defining belief for billions of people all over the world today? Thanks for digging into this with us.